Bordering the Lachine Canal and crisscrossed by rail lines, St. Henri is one of Montreal's oldest neighborhoods. Traditionally a working-class quarter, its history is inextricably linked to the city's industrial past. Many of the businesses that built this city set up shop here, and the workers who manned those shops made St. Henri their home. The legacy of Montreal's manufacturing past is prevalent in the architectural makeup of the area. While most factories have closed, turned into condos, or simply laid to waste, a small group of manufacturers remain. Entrepreneurs who've managed to stay viable by making quality goods for high-end niche markets. Today, we will meet 3 such makers. 2 woodworkers who've carved out a living serving fine artists throughout Canada. A paper maker whose adherence to tradition produces the highest quality stock. And an upholstered furniture maker whose sofas and chairs combine traditional craftsmanship with modern luxury. Established in 1988, Faux Cadre Canal started out providing canvas stretchers for a very select group of Canadian artists. After taking over the business in 2008, Zeke Scholes and Dave Baton transformed Faux Cadre into the go-to one-stop shop for hundreds of artists in need of custom frames, canvases, and a variety of installation equipment. How did you get into this business?
Dave and I met at an architecture firm that was sort of unique in that they'd make their own designs. And in that, we learned to work together as well as to work to manifest, other people's ideas without interfering with what they're trying to do.
What about coming to St. Henri, this building here, this fine post and beam, wooden?
Well, we had a contract that really needed us to achieve another level of precision, so we came looking for a facility that we could set up in and do that, and that led us here as one of the, fewer and fewer shops in the downtown core.
Yeah. Do you think the area still allows for a little bit of manufacturing,
I would say there's a long history of it with the canal and steeped in the neighborhood, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
And the residential houses are right alongside of the industrial houses, and it's all sort of interrelated.
Zeke and Dave are not only woodworkers, but art facilitators, craftspeople who make the behind-the-scenes structures that help artists manifest their vision. They can bring a concept to you, and you can guide them through how to realize that piece of art. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a tricky dialogue in that you don't want to interfere with the concept or fundamentally change their intent by making it structurally feasible. But therein is the challenge, and therein is sort of the dialogue and the negotiation we have with the artists and the art world.
Cool. I would add that it also depends on the artist quite a bit. Sometimes they come to us, they have enough of an understanding of wood and structure that they know exactly what they want, and here's the drawing, and how much will this cost and how long, when can I have it?
Right.
Others will, maybe not have as much knowledge, and they come to us and we take on a more consultation type role. In which case, we try and be sensitive to their concept and sort of the end result they're trying to achieve. Okay. And we'll make suggestions as to, maybe we should try and do this, or maybe this should be done that way. And sure. Then so we try and help them through that process to achieve the work that they're trying to present.
Zeke and Dave's practical know-how is particularly handy when it comes to large-scale public art projects, like the 1% initiative funded by the Quebec government.
All new government constructions have to allocate 1% of the total budget to the display of permanent art within the new construction.
Gotcha.
So a recent one we did was for the Jewish General, and it was 21 panels that all go together to make a 115-foot painting.
Wow.
Which is substantial.
Sure.
And to indicate the level of precision and the fastidiousness with which we work, We subtracted the thickness of every piece of canvas on every stretcher so that it actually ends at 115 feet and not 115 feet, an inch a quarter of all those added thicknesses.
Sure, that's...
So, you know, and seeing ahead, seeing the issues before they happen. In that case, we'll meet with the architect of the hospital renovation and define, well, this is what the wall will have to be to hold this piece. Here's how the hanging system will have to work in order for it to be safe and not be removable.
Right.
And with the artist himself, we design ways for him to be able to work on a few canvases at a time as his studio permits, but in such a way that he can align everything over 115 feet and not have misalignments in the image itself.
Their high-quality products result from a meticulous attention to detail, starting right at the beginning with the selection of wood. I want to know why you insist on milling your own wood.
That's a good question. There's a big difference between commercially machined wood versus what the trained eye can pick up. All wood will move. The way it will move in time has a lot to do with this process. The eye of the artisan is really what's gonna safeguard against that. And it's actually one of the ways that we can ensure that our stuff is stable and will stay square for a really long time. In the case of commercially milled wood, they just take all of these kinds of pieces, they send them through a machine, and it just spits anything out. And if you take the very next piece and throw that into a stretcher, that might not be the right piece. It might be near, you know, the crotch of the tree, and then will be some sort of structural irregularity that will cause a kink or a bow. Now, which side the bevel will be taken out of is important. Which side the joinery gets cut out of it is important, because all those things will have an effect on the wood, the way it moves. So these are the sort of things that we have an eye for and scrutinize.
So will you take us through the steps of what it takes to make a final product?
Sure. Well, we start with the wood, the raw wood, as we saw. We take it over to milling, where it gets straightened, planed, thicknessed, all of that kind of thing. We now have a reliably flat board,
right,
which we then take over to the table saw,
right,
rip that into our baguettes. Baguettes then taken over back to our space,
right,
where things get mitered to their, finished lengths. In the case of a stretcher, they come back out here, they get beveled, the little bevel on the edge so that the canvas doesn't touch, or only touches right at the edge. From there, we come over to the dado. The dado is where the joinery, the dado joints get cut out of the pieces. Then it goes back to the space, can be assembled, stretched, gessoed, and on and on.
All right. While much of their work complies with long-standing woodworking traditions, Faux Cadre also embraces innovation, developing new art products with like-minded makers in St. Henry.
This is something we're pretty excited about, as we've never seen anything quite like it, which is very rare in what we do. Most of what we do has been invented over 500 years ago, but this is a paper panel that we're making in conjunction with Papeterie St Armand, and it's a canvas, but instead of canvas, it's a floating panel made with handmade paper. The idea being that we'll be able to service pastel artists and watercolor artists, as well as drawers and more paperwork. The fun thing about it is that it kind of pushes paper off the wall, which I think is a good thing, because paper is often denigrated in the art world, and this kind of gives it a presence that it otherwise wouldn't have.
The paper used for Faux Cadre's new product comes from Papeterie St Armand, a mill specializing in handmade, high-end art paper. It also happens to be my Uncle Dave's shop. It's where I started working when I first arrived in this city, and part of the inspiration behind my exploration of what is made in Montreal. Dave and I come from a long line of paper makers. Whereas our family business was in large-scale manufacturing, Dave's shop embraces traditional, even ancient paper-making techniques.
This is the 5th mill, but all the mills have been within, a few blocks of here.
Sure.
So I watched the development, the decline of the old industries that used to be associated with knitting and glove making and leather goods and mattresses and that sort of thing, fall away because largely they were branch plants of American companies, to be followed by a whole bunch of new activities, which now I'm one of the older of the new activities.
I want to get a little bit of our family history in paper making from you.
Well, it goes back 100 years or so, really. It's an old tradition in the family making paper. I started off with, pulping with a washing machine and, buying pulp where I could, but never making a piece of paper that was worth a damn, to be honest. It took probably 10 years of just, limping along before I really figured out how to make pulp out of rags.
Making paper out of rags begins with, well, rags, which Dave is happy to show as he tours me around the mill.
This material is used we use about 1/3 of this to 2/3 of that. So our beet, which is about 300 or 400 pounds, might have 100 pounds of this, together with 200 or 300 pounds of this.
Okay.
This is the strongest fiber we can ever get.
Is that right?
This is not as strong, but it does help that fiber lay flat on the machine. So our paper is a blend of about 1/4 of bed sheets with 2/3 or 3/4 of
underwear.
the long underwear, yeah, and t-shirt cutting, yeah.
This is the machine that makes this a mill. This is what turns the rag to pulp finally.
Yeah, the reason I guess they called them paper mills is because originally they would have been driven by the force of a current, but the name has stuck. So the Hollander beater was probably early 1700s.
These blades cut against the blades of the bed plate.
They cut, but they're not cutting really, they're compressing the material between the bed plate and the roll.
So it is really teasing the...
Yeah, it's teasing, it's actually the action of the rag is doing the work. 20,000 liters of water take 400 pounds of rag.
Okay.
So that will produce a pulp at a consistency of about 96% water.
Right.
And 4% solid. It's quite liquid, but it's still enough you can reach in, grab it, and squeeze the water out and be left with a maton de quelque chose.
Yeah. So it's over 5,000 gallons of pulp slurry. Is that right?
That's right. It wants to form into a sheet. It's clinging together. It's already starting to be a paper. That's the consistency that Edgardo is working with. Japan, for example, all the sake labels on booze will be handmade Japanese paper.
Is that right?
And whereas here in Canada, we don't have a culture of handmade paper except at the very beginning, when most of the people went in making bonnets, like baseball caps.
Oh, sure.
Like peaks.
Okay.
It was a crazy thing. It was a huge market at the beginning of the 19th century when paper making started in Canada. So a bonnet board.
Bonnet board, so it went into hats. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And sugar wrap. So these were not very distinguished papers.
So since way back in Canada, when they were being used for, esoteric uses like bonnets and things, or I guess those have been common uses at the time.
Yeah.
But there has not been handmade paper in Canada since the advent of the big paper machines. Is that right?
Pretty much. I mean, it came along about the same time.
Okay.
So Canada never really had to have very much in the way of, there were a few mills.
Handmade paper.
But the paper machine came along pretty quickly.
Right, okay.
By 1830, they were making paper by machine.
In addition to its handmade products, St Armand produces high-quality, machine-made art stock.
And the machine is, about 75 feet or 100 feet long, and it'll run all the pulp that's in that reservoir tomorrow, as about 2,000 sheets of sheet.
2230?
Yeah, 2230, yeah.
Because it can make paper by hand and machine, St. Armand produces an array of unique goods geared towards a variety of specialty markets.
This is cotton rag. This is made from T-shirt cuttings from Stanfields. And this is made from agricultural fiber from Western Canada.
And this is flax straw that you've got mixed in here?
That's flax straw. That is the 100% the fiber.
Oh, that's
flax
just
straw.
like raw flax
Yeah,
straw.
yeah. But it's a wonderful paper.
It's a
got
neat
nice
paper.
rattle and
Yeah, it's got a hard
punches
character,
through very well.
compared to the cotton that's
This
got
one
a softer
here
and
is
thicker character.
It's softer, but it has a hard surface. You can erase on this. You can see the texture. So for a watercolorist, that's good. It means the pigment will settle into the little valleys of the texture and sparkle. So that's one of the things that a watercolorist is looking for.
And then this is the machine made, hey?
That's machine made, yeah. That's the paper. It's flatter, sort of smoother. It's got the decal edge, though, and it's got some characteristics that people like over the handmade.
Right.
And it's a cheaper paper, of course. It's probably a third to a half the price of a handmade.
But it doesn't have that three-dimensional feel like it's a skin. This...
But it does a job that won't do. And all the papers have to do a particular job.
Will you show us a book?
Yeah, these are small sketchbooks made with handmade covers. This is a canal pad or block for painting, and it's a view of the canal 100 years ago.
The Lachine Canal, right?
Lachine Canal out the door.
Yeah.
Canal is the grade of paper or the kinds of paper that we make on the paper machine.
Okay.
So, and this is a very hot book. This sells very well. It represents a pretty good image for Montreal.
Yeah.
And we're happy to sell it all over the world.
St. Armand's line of canal paper is also a lovely homage to the famous Lachine Canal, a permanent symbol of Montreal's manufacturing past. Today, the large Victorian factories lining the canal have been converted into condos or subdivided into smaller business spaces, which includes some manufacturers. Located in a northeast wing of what was once the sprawling Dominion textile plant, l'Atelier Mirage is a prime example of one of these new kinds of manufacturers, drawn to St. Henry's spacious and historic industrial buildings. Company founder Philip Shapiro started his career in fashion making custom suits, but transitioned into furniture, making custom couches and chairs sold throughout North America. How did you get your start?
It started off that I was looking for a business venture to get involved in. My younger sister was renovating a home of hers that she had just purchased, and she had a fellow who was an upholsterer working there. And she said he was very skilled, but he needed financing and maybe some sales help and direction. I had a lot of background in clothing, so I knew textiles and fabrics and manufacturing process. And so we got together and we tried it out for a while together. I approached the Quebec government for some financing for export development, and they said that I was too small and I wasn't the right fit for what they were trying to do in export development. And so I basically had all of these magazines that my mom had collected over the years of Architectural Digest, and in the back of them it lists the names of the designers who were being shown in each magazine. And when I found a few of those names together, I wrote them down, and then I went to New York and I cold called them.
Wow.
And to this day, the people that I went to see are still our clients. Basically, I went there and I offered them to build them a piece of furniture for themselves, for their home, because we didn't have the funds or the size of a company to build showrooms throughout the United States and Canada and have all these collections. And we wanted Mirage to be a place where designers and architects could close their eyes, dream up whatever they wanted, and when they opened them up, Mirage would be there.
In addition to Philip's obvious business savvy, the company's success is based on the principles of high-quality craftsmanship.
It's always been a process of tooling our shops with the best tools available, finding the best skilled labor possible for each department, and putting together a product that everybody's proud to produce, still domestically in Montreal.
Montreal, is it an important city in the furniture manufacturing world?
It was very important for us to be in Montreal when we attracted the clientele from New York, because there was a situation that went on at that particular moment in time when we approached New Yorkers where rents got very, very expensive for the upholsterers that were there, that were situated in New York, and they moved to Philadelphia. So when I went in to see designers, they had a choice. They could go and deal an hour from New York and go to Philadelphia by train, or they could come to Little Paris, hang out, get a bit of the French feeling, better restaurants, a cooler atmosphere, and get out of their country for a day or two. And so they were excited about it, and that's worked very well in our favor.
Also working in their favor is the ability to create specialized goods for individual clients. L'Atelier Mirage collaborates directly with designers and architects. From the initial concept through to the final product, each step of the manufacturing process is tailored to the needs and desires of the client. And servicing such a highly niche market requires a team of highly specialized makers. Once the design's been decided on by your client, it comes to the wood shop, and
where you get to meet my master builder.
Daniela Tudor is the company's master builder, but she's also, quite literally, a doctor of wood. With a PhD in wood science from the University of Toronto, Daniela's intimate knowledge of wood and wood decay gives her an unparalleled ability to evaluate and construct wood frames for each custom Mirage piece. Everything that Atelier Mirage makes is made from hardwood, right?
Yes, it's soft maple, and we call it wormy maple because it has some sort of worm invasion.
Worm invasion holes.
And that's these things here.
Yeah.
And so it gets these little stripes in it.
Yeah, it's considered a defect for timber, but for us it's perfect.
So it allows you to buy material at a good price and make your furniture from hardwood.
Yes.
So you're trying to introduce the aesthetic of wormy maple into the furniture business as a, wow, as trying to change the world.
As a wood that would be used as a finished product rather than just an interior framing product.
Okay.
And taking advantage of the grains that are created both through
because of the
natural knots as well as the wormy holes at the same time, because after you've added a finish to it, it accentuates
the grain of the wood.
Right. And being all Canadian lumber, that's part of it. That's part of it.
Local. Will you show us the springs next?
Sure. When we come out of the frame shop, it comes over to this department where we start doing the springing.
So this is the frame of the couch here.
Yeah.
And the springing is what keeps the person lofty.
These are the springs that you use on the backs. This is what we're famous for. This is called 8-way hand-tied coil springs, and it's used in the seats of the sofas and chairs. It's an art that's no longer being done in most shops today, and if you walk into most stores, you'll never find this type of construction. It is the ultimate construction for a sofa, because once it's done properly, if you put a pressure in one area, you don't have any effect to this area.
Okay.
So where you sit is exactly where the springs will hold you. The edges, however, are done in a soft way so that it's softer on your legs when you sit down.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the first part of putting together a high-quality sofa. And again, once again, it's a lost art.
So you do that to the customer's taste, right?
Well, my original background was in clothing, and then we treat it like men's suits, where you would come in for a fitting. We have 3 sittings. So if you're really going through the custom experience, you get to come in and sit down, and we will spring it so that the seat in the back, or if you have a concern, like maybe you have a bad back, we can customize the springs to your lumbar position, and then we build cushions up from that are the comfort to you particularly, which is why you would buy custom.
Once the springs are done, the client chooses a foam.
Right.
That goes on top of the springs?
Right, and for an example, these are some of the densities we have. They're high rubber content, and then they have, as you put your hand down, you'll see this is far firmer than this one.
Yeah.
These type of foams are very difficult to find in any furniture that's done at a retail level, because the cost of the foam that we put on a custom sofa is probably the same cost as the sofa you would buy completely done in the store or those places that have those throwaway kind of items.
And then it's covered with fabric. And this is the cutting table, eh? Normally.
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to be 21 years old this June, and in the 21 years we've had 3 different cutters work at our table, and nobody's ever been quite the technician that this gentleman's been. Nothing here is cut by pattern. In our custom shop, it's draped onto the pieces and fitted individually piece by piece, because we don't do reoccurring styles. Everything's always something new. There's no real pattern. He's got shape patterns over here that'll give him an idea for a curve that he could work with, but in general, everything's draped piece by piece onto the piece that it's being done with.
And your clients, they come in with their fabric, or you supply it for them, or how does that work?
We do a bit of both, but I would say 99% of the fabrics that we get are supplied to us by either an interior designer or an architect representing their clients. We build our own cushions, and we can customize the feelings of them, whereas other companies buy them from cushion makers, and it's kind of like a medium, you know? And this is how it's done.
Sure, you could make a cushion that's not filled at all, practically.
It's all done with a bazooka. It's an air machine, and at one end the down goes in, and at the other end it goes into a bag that fills out a cushion, kind of like that, in a downproof ticking. But we're able to make it firmer or softer for whatever the client wants when they come in for their fitting.
Custom workmanship meets custom salesmanship in their stunning factory showroom. It's a wonderful space. It's really cool to see your factory. But that you've linked your showroom with the factory, with these windows. You can see everything.
Yeah, it's an industry where you don't see how things are made. You go to a store predominantly and see a piece of furniture. You see the exterior of it. You never see the interior. We wanted it to be transparent. We're proud of what we put inside as much as we are about what we put outside.
Right.
So why not show it off? And from our point of view, you're in our showroom and we want to sell the sizzle. That's the sizzle.
Nice. And it would seem that selling the sizzle is an essential component for all of the St. Henri makers we featured today. Faux Cadre Canal, Papeterie St Armand, and l'Atelier Mirage embrace the principles of personalized service and traditional craftsmanship to stay viable in a modern market. A window into Montreal's manufacturing past, St. Henri has become the home of unique and modern makers. Another great place to explore what is made in Montreal.